To a new edition, especially in rural areas. With us this evening is engineer Hassan Shaaban, who is the former vice president of the Farmers Syndicate. A pleasure to have you with us. We always talk about the obvious, main cities, roads, bridges, railroads, transportation, sources of energy. We've done a lot. Quite frankly, the president, since he came to office, he has upgraded a lot of that.
Very true.
Now we're talking about a very, very important aspect, or a very, very important sect, which is the rural areas, not just the urban. We've had Haya Karima 1, Decent Life 1, now Decent Life 2, and it's all pouring towards, we have 2030 SDGs, the Social Sustainable Development Goals, and it's all pouring towards that. But for the first time, we see a plan to go to the deprived areas and get people to live in conditions, humanitarian, suffice it to say, conditions whereby people can live, they can work, they can receive services like
medical
proper
care,
education, care. But in my point of view, what's important is that you no longer need to leave your home, leave the village where you grew, leave your family,
to find a
and
job,
go to the capital or to travel somewhere else to find a job. So it's
this is true.
How do you see us approaching that that issue?
You see, the countryside been waiting so long, actually. The previous governments actually thought that just providing fresh water to the villages, this is something miraculous. This is not really the case. In order for you to develop a village, you need to look at the whole thing at the same time. You don't work in one aspect and leave the others. Egyptian villages were neglected for so long. Services, we will talk about services in a while, but the infrastructure in the villages were really in a very bad condition. In many cases, there were no infrastructure.
Yes.
Dirt roads, and you know, we all saw what happened, the attack on the fertile soil and building you know, houses on fertile soil with no planning, no permits, no nothing. So actually the government was incapable of providing infrastructure for these buildings. So what we have today is we're looking in reality. What we have a village that suffered for so long from negligence in the infrastructure. So what we do, the program that they started actually was controlling irrigation, for instance, lining all the channels with concrete and you know, trying to save water by preventing seepage under the ground, trying to train farmers to use modern ways of irrigation, dripping and sprinklers. And I think it's working out. Of course, you know, the trip just started. So we're looking at a project in the beginning, but hopefully, you know, these things were neglected for so long. When we go to a village, actually, you will see that services were not really there, like garbage collection. You know, even lighting was recently, you know, took place in these villages. But you need to create new jobs for the youth. You need to train them to these new jobs, meaning we are in agricultural society. We require compost, for instance.
Yes.
So if the village produces garbage, why not recycle and separate paper and so forth, and glass, and take the organic substance and turn them to a compost, and
Okay.
use the compost in the area where this village lies. And this is a source of income for the village itself. So you need to create jobs. You need to create small markets in the villages itself to market the products, the agricultural products, instead of having to travel for for a long distance to reach a central market outside the village. So the government is really finally dealing with the matter in a very realistic way. They're handling all the details. They're not neglecting anything. Services, creating new jobs, training young people for new jobs, creating business chances in the villages. Hopefully, this will take some time.
In your opinion, what about? We're talking about sustainable development, not short-term development.
You see, talk about it, that you're going to provide the whole formula. But when you have an old village that you like to develop and change it, actually this takes a little bit of time. But the challenge is to change the culture of the people who lived in this place for so many years, and
Yes.
have certain traditions and have a certain way of living. And I think what we require is the media to have campaigns, the Ministry of Education, a group of efforts actually should be put together in order to try to, change the Egyptian village once and for all, and bring it back to a productive village that can actually stand on its own, because most of the Egyptian villages today are a consumer village. So
In the past, in history, where plots of land were huge. So basically, you would own quite a large number of fiddans, and those fiddans you would grow mostly one crop, which really contribute quite efficiently to the agricultural economy, if I can put it that way.
Yes.
Unfortunately, in certain phases of our those plots were, and it was left to each farmer to grow what until bit by bit we really destroyed our
We have a chaos, yes.
agri-land.
Yes.
And now we are revamping and doing land reclamation projects in the desert. While we had excellent agri-land in rural areas. Is there a way to go back again to a unified strategy of product growth? Like I said before, there were certain areas that this area or this governorate was famous for growing cotton. This other area was famous for growing sugarcane. And basically you have ample supply of all kinds of products, but in a scientific and healthy fashion.
You see, this is a very hard task that the Ministry of Agriculture should face, and the Ministry of Development, actually, rural development. Because, yes, as you said, we have small ownerships right now, and this will not allow the using modern machines in agriculture. So once you have a small area and the different types of crops here and there, but the only solution is to have what's so-called contractual crops. I mean, I will grow a certain crop, and I know from day one that I will be able to sell it to the government, and the government could actually make the whole area grow the same crop again. So we can
Is this better?
definitely.
Because this is how it was, and it
Yes.
was very lucrative for Egypt. Is it better than the bits and pieces of small
Definitely,
land?
definitely.
I know the government is doing this in reclaimed again, but I'm talking about in rural villages.
Let me put it this way. What controls soil and the availability of water.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion, I think all the delta should be allocated for strategic crops.
Okay.
The delta land is something that we're going to have to preserve, and because it's not renewable anymore, because that was developed over millions of years. I think and using the reclaimed land in the desert and allocate it for certain crops. This will improve the situation and will be, it's a management, agricultural management as well, water management, because the dark soil of the delta can preserve water because it's a hard soil.
Yes.
Once you grow things in the desert, the seepage amount is a lot more than the regular clay, and so what you require actually is to control the type of crop and instruct the farmers in areas not to grow other crops than that. This area is for that crop in particular. This chaos we have today, the desert and the claimed land from the desert is suitable for fruits and vegetable actually, and the desert is also suitable for certain crops if we use our expertise, meaning we could grow certain crops that produce sugar and consume a lot less water than sugar cane. The stevia, this is a plant that we got from South America, from Uruguay, and apparently this plant liked living in Egypt, and it grew very well, and the weather was suitable. It's not really a very hungry plant for water. It's it consumes a certain reasonable amount of water, better than the sugarcane. So we are facing a water problem. So this crop is a substitute to the sugarcane. We need to be creative actually and see what other people have done, and it's very successful. The United Arab Emirates are doing that. Saudi Arabia is doing that. They're using seawater for irrigation on certain plants. The silicornia, it's a halophyte plant that actually consumes, as I said, sodium chloride, and they grow cattle. It's massive, raising cattle over these areas that grow the silicon. So we need to be creative. We need to change the ideas of the farmer in Egypt. These areas will attract, if we create these new types of farming, it will attract the young people.
What about the education of the farmers, especially the young generations? Because here we're talking about new technologies, we're talking about new methods, we're talking about adapting to new environmental issues.
To be honest with you, you do not require to change the farmer to a scientist. Actually, we as of the ninth grade, farmers, as long as they can read and write, it will be very easy for a trainer to train them to these methods, and teach them how to use new irrigation methods, new plants, whatever. So I don't think it requires a very sophisticated system of education. But it requires a lot of training, and it requires help from the government. Let me put it this way. The government is encouraging people the farmers, I mean, to use new modern methods of irrigation to save water. Why not have a plant that use old tires, the rubber tires, to manufacture tubes that are cheap instead of using very expensive tubes right now, and the government, the farmer really cannot really afford these prices today. I think the government will also have to give tax exemptions to the farmers. The farmer is paying about 14% today on these modern equipment for irrigation. So I think the whole thing requires to be looked at in order for us to make life easier for the farmers in these new areas. Also, once you use these new methods of irrigation, you will require booster pumps to create pressure because these methods require water under pressure. I think again we might use renewable energy, wind, sun, in order to be able to create this pressure in the water systems. The whole thing is connected to one another, but I think we've started making life a lot easier for the farmers in their villages. But again, as I said, the whole thing is a combination that requires to be looked at.
Role of women, which is an contradiction maybe, because but you have over 50% of rural areas of Egyptians who happen to be females.
Yes.
And indeed, the female is standing right there in the farm next to her husband, but how can we incorporate, especially the young generation of females, to become a productive part of the rural areas, so to speak?
This is very simple. There is certain activity female. Young girls in the countryside could be trained to pick up the fruits, packing, harvest. A lot of activities are suitable for girls as of like the age of 12, while the law prevents utilizing young children to
for
work.
labor.
But again, in the summertime where they have holidays, I think they work to assist their families, financially. I think there is a lot of work that is suitable for females in the countryside. But again, I think it requires training, a training program, and it requires facilities like a location where you can handle packing. A lot of things are there for young girls. And also we have to encourage the traditional things that the countryside used to produce, carpets, traditional products, weaving and spinning. A lot of things could be produced from what we neglect right now. Palm trees are there all over, and I think we should just enhance this and use the...
Where is our competitive edge? Because crops that distinguished Egypt. Like, I'm always going back to cotton because this is the white gold,
Yes.
so to speak. What crops do you think we should be concentrating on, whereby we can be the world food basket in that business, for example?
To be honest with you, I think fruits are the item that we should concentrate on. We are probably the top country in oranges and tangerine.
We import a lot of that, yes.
Yes.
We export.
Yeah.
So.
And strawberries, and crops like corn. I like to see massive areas of corn grow in Egypt, and this will improve the situation a little bit because we import a lot of corn right now, and we depend on the corn in feeding our animals. And I think we need to have a new way of producing bread, because as the president said recently that this is costing us a fortune. We need to give the Egyptians the choice to pick up the type of bread they want from different seeds, actually.
Yes.
Whatever. I think I don't really have anything else to do except this will liberate the Egyptian farmer, because the Egyptian farmer is under a lot of pressure right now, and living in this program in Haya Karima is only the beginning, because we are very ambitious as farmers. We are looking for a lot more than this, to be honest with you.
And Shaaban, thank you very much. Thank you. Pleasant evening, and we'll see you same time next week. Until then, good night.